Welcome to the No Quit Living podcast. Our primary objective is to motivate and inspire our listeners to never quit. The reality of life is simple. We all fall. We all fail. At times, we get knocked down. The question is, do we get back up? Are we stronger? Are we better prepared to attain the maximum of our potential? Thank you for joining our No Quit tribe. As you go for your greatness today, never quit. And remember, we rise by lifting others up. Welcome to episode number 553 of the No Quit Living podcast. I'm your host, Christopher J. Worth, and today's theme of the day is inner excellence. Our quote of the day comes from Jim Murphy himself. Failure is not the opposite of success. It's part of success. Every setback is an opportunity to grow stronger, wiser, and more prepared for the next challenge. A couple weeks ago, I released my newest book, Process Before Results. If you're looking for a quick and practical read that focuses on trusting the process, not just chasing the result, I think you'll enjoy it. You can grab a copy by heading on over to Amazon. And as always, thank you for your support. Now let me share how today's episode came to be. I was watching an NFL playoff game this past season when the camera panned to the Philadelphia Eagles sideline. Wide receiver A.J. Brown was sitting on the bench reading a book. That book, Inner Excellence by Jim Murphy. Naturally, I jumped on Amazon and ordered myself a copy, and I'm glad I did. Today, I had the pleasure of speaking with Jim himself, and I know you're going to receive a lot of value from this conversation. I hope you enjoy today's episode. Jim, I'd like to welcome you to the No Quit Living podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Appreciate it. First question we ask each guest is, are you ready to positively impact at least one person today?
I sure hope so.
So the premise behind not only our podcast, but our company, No Quit Living, is really to inspire people to never give up on themselves, their goals, or their dreams. And I want to ask if you have a no-quit story of your own, or perhaps a challenging time, personally or professionally, where you could have given up or given in, but you didn't.
Oh, yeah. Many times. I mean, most of my life has been paycheck to paycheck to no paycheck to paycheck. I mean, I was a minor league baseball player making $500 a month for 5 years. Well, I got a little pay raise. I mean, it was all still below the poverty line, I think. But so I did that for 5 years. And then I was a grad student. Of course, they're like the poorest people around. And so that's another few years. And one of the first thing that came to mind was I had thought about being a firefighter. My plan was, because I played college football and college baseball. And I thought after that was finished, what if I pursued golf? I was a once-a-year golfer, but what if I pursued golf professionally on the senior tour? So become a firefighter and work 9 days a month and then 21 days a month golf for 8 hours a day and see if I could make it on the seniors tour by the time I was 50. So I had that idea and plan. And then I tested for Seattle and was top 60 going into the interviews, and they were hiring 60 out of 3,000 applicants. And I didn't get the job. And then I decided to kind of stop that pursuit of firefighting and kind of get into this coaching thing. And but it took many years, decades. And so whenever I saw a fire engine and heard the sirens and saw it go by, I would kind of get a little punch in the gut because I'm in my 30s and guys my age are married, kids, houses, spending money, going out to dinner, and I had no money. And so, yeah, many times there's a long few years where I see a fire truck and it would kind of like, why didn't I just be like a normal person and just get a regular job and I could have a house by now? And, instead I'm here just kind of living on scraps.
Well, I appreciate it. I did not know that backstory. And I think the story of working 9 days a month and then working on the golf game for 21 is pretty interesting. If anybody, my listeners have seen me play golf, I think I would have needed probably about 300 days per year with golf only just to maybe make like the putt-putt league. So I definitely appreciate you sharing that backstory. A fun question we ask each guest is, if you had to define yourself, but you could only pick one word, what word did you pick?
Well, it's kind of cliche, but blessed, I guess. I certainly don't deserve this life, and God's given me way more than I deserve. So
I appreciate your candor on that, and want to kick off the reason why you and I connected is your book, Inner Excellence, which I read. I really enjoyed as a mental performance coach myself. I think almost every other page, I don't know if you can see it, is folded down, and I took notes after notes. And have to ask a selfish question, if you wouldn't mind. I've written 3 books. If you could just give each of them to AJ Brown and ask him to hold them on the sideline, that would be awesome. Just because that's how you and I connected. All jokes aside, but I think the success you've had with this book, it's everything that you did up to this point. And I'm glad you shared your initial story of minor league baseball and all that you've done, because I think what people see is they see a highlight reel and they say, oh, I can do this, it's easy. But I think what they don't see is all the work you put behind that. So wanted to give you an opportunity to ask you to tell us a little bit about the book, why you wrote it, and for our listeners out there, I want you to touch on when you actually wrote it, because there's a lot behind the scenes other than what people see on social media.
When I think about my story so far, one of the things that comes to mind is I was playing minor league baseball, and my teammate John Turley, we were on the bus one time talking about our lives, and we both kind of asked ourselves this question and kind of gave the same answer. Would you rather go for your dreams and potentially fail, or go for a decent life and succeed? And we both said I would rather go for our dreams and fail than succeed and not pursuing it. And I think that's kind of my personality has always been to go for it. And so there's been a lot of non-success over the years. It's been a long road, but I mean, not any longer than anyone else's.
I think that's the biggest disconnect I see with social media, and I don't want in any way to knock social media, but I think people edit their videos, their photos, they use different filters, and there's nothing wrong with sharing success or your success with others, but I think it's, for me, it's all the other stuff behind the scenes. And want to ask you about your failures. Do you believe that you wouldn't be where you are today if you hadn't failed along the way to get you to not only go through it, but to learn from them?
Well, I just wrote another book that came out in November. It's going to get re-released by Hachette in the fall, called "The Best Possible Life: How to Live with Deep Contentment, Joy, and Confidence, No Matter What." It's kind of a summary of inner excellence and a book on the spiritual life. And what I say in there, because the subtitle to inner excellence is "Train Your Mind for Extraordinary Performance and the Best Possible Life." And the key is the last phrase, the best possible life, because what good is it if you gain $1 million or 1 million followers and you're not filled with, your life doesn't have any meaning and peace and joy. So the best possible life has one foot in joy and one foot in suffering. And so what I mean by the best possible life, I mean, it's pretty self-explanatory. This is kind of a dream I've always had. Always want the best. I want to be the best. I want to have the best of everything since I was little. And, I always thought it was, like every other kid, it's pleasure. I want to have the most pleasure. And then when you get to be a teenager, you kind of realize, well, at least I did. Okay, I mean, I love pleasure, but I also have dreams. And so I realized, you start to realize, okay, they start to conflict. Do I want to be a Major League Baseball player, or do I want to go out late every night and sleep in and just have as much fun as I can right now in high school? If I want to be a Major League Baseball player, then I got to practice and put in the work. And so understanding that the best possible life has one foot in joy, one foot in suffering is crucial. And it's also a life of surrender. You have to surrender your ego and your little power for a greater power. If you want to do something great, if you want to reach your potential, you have to be willing to suffer. You have to be willing to fail and take risks and look foolish. So those are some of the keys.
I really love that concept of your best life, and I think it's something that people put out on social media. A lot of the hashtag "living my best life," and that goes back to my comment before about filtered images and edited videos. But I think in your space, and obviously we're in similar spaces, those people that achieve greatness or a high level of success, they have failed so many more times than other people. but it's because of those failures that they're able to get to that level of success, whether that's sports, business. And I think that's the one thing that people, I think, miss out on, because you're going for somebody else's success, or you're trying to follow somebody else's accomplishments, as opposed to really and truly going back to the question you shared with a teammate of yours is, do you really want to go for your dreams and maybe fall short, or do you want to play it safe? And I think a lot of people ultimately default to playing it safe.
Yeah, the big difference between most successful people in any field and everyone else is that they're willing to fail, they're willing to take risks, and their failure rate is a lot higher than the average person's. And I was talking to Hall of Fame linebacker Brian Urlacher, I believe, and I asked him what was the difference between the best players in the NFL and everyone else, or the best players that he played against and himself versus others. And he said the biggest difference was the ability to make a mistake and not get tentative. And he said most NFL players will make a mistake and they get tentative after that. And he said he was able to not do that. I think of the great number 4 quarterback, Brett Favre. I think he was a good example. He just throws an interception. He'll just keep throwing interceptions, or just keep coming at you, whether they're interceptions or not, regardless. I think that's what it takes to be great.
It's ironic you mentioned that my dad was a huge Brett Favre Packers fan, and we used to, in the house, always joke around, the gunslinger. So if we'd be watching a game and, he threw a goofy interception, maybe it was a pick six or whatnot, we would always be like, all right, like, once he gets the ball back, like, he's doing it again. And more often than not, he would make a play. But I love that. I'm glad that you shared that that conversation with you and Brian Urlacher, because I think when you look at sports, just like anything in life, we're all going to fail. And I talk often with my clients that nobody retires undefeated. So you just referenced football. If you want to talk about one of the greatest, if not the greatest football players of all time, obviously a lot of people mention the name Tom Brady. Tom Brady didn't ever have a perfect full season. Yes, they had one regular season, but they didn't win the Super Bowl. But he's not remembered for those losses. He's not remembered for the games that, he didn't win and the interceptions. He's remembered because he kept on coming back, and he did not play with fear, and he'd make a mistake, in my opinion, and he'd come back and he'd learn from it. I think it's what you do from those failures or those losses that I think define that differentiating factor between successful people, average people, and the absolute elite of the elite.
For sure.
Inner excellence, such a cool concept, and I've heard you talk about it, and I've done my research before the interview today, and I wanted to ask if you wouldn't mind just defining it in your own words for our listeners, because I think no one better than you can define it.
Yeah, when I think of inner excellence, I think of multiple things. One, as an in-depth system to be fully present in your life, fully engaged, heart, mind, and body, unattached to your goals and dreams. You can also think of inner excellence as the pursuit of self-mastery. And when I think of mastery, I think of really mastering your ego, because that's part of us that really provides the greatest challenge. The part of our mind that's always threatened, always comparing, and never satisfied. And when I think of mastering the ego, I think of being unembarrassable and unoffendable and unirritatable. And so inner excellence is a way of life. It's a way of living. It's the pursuit of non-judgmental awareness. It's the pursuit of daily growth and love, wisdom, and courage, and understanding that the most important thing that you could ever seek is wisdom. And wisdom is the ability to have unobstructed views of reality, of possibilities, of connections, of beauty, to know who God is and therefore who you are, what He's doing in the world, and how you can join in. And so, inner excellence is an energy. It's a vibe that you're creating every day by what you read and watch and listen to, and people you hang out with, and the thoughts you think and actions you take based on those thoughts and feelings.
Appreciate that. And what do you think are the biggest obstacles when it comes to preventing people to really achieving their inner excellence?
Yeah, the ego, the part of our mind that's always threatened, always comparing. And so one of the biggest challenges most performers have in any sport or in anything is lack of freedom, and they lack freedom because of the fear of failure, and the fear of comparison and how they'll look, and fear of being judged. Because our greatest need is for unconditional love. Our greatest desires is to be fully known and fully loved, especially by someone of extreme worth. And the greatest fear is to be rejected. So that's why there's such a lack of freedom, because so much is out of your control when you're, by definition, sports are um, they have obstacles in them to try and create this competition. Our Western culture is so obsessed with winning that it creates this fear of losing, and so the greatest performers are able to find that place within themselves where winning and losing is not an issue.
For any of our listeners, maybe that are struggling with either the comparison piece or the ego piece, is there something that you would recommend to them to really be able to step into going more for their inner excellence and not being, I guess, held back by their fear of comparison or the ego?
Yeah, I would recommend the alternate target tool. The alternate target tool came to me in golf initially. I had a pro golfer that was getting a mental block on short putts, and this is kind of what happens with mental blocks. Like I wrote in the book that NFL kickers don't get mental blocks on 55-yard field goals. They get mental blocks on extra points. It's the easy things that we expected to do that we get, human nature is to have a mental block on, not the harder things. Like how stressed do you get on a 40-foot putt? For birdie, you're not going to get too stressed on that. But on a 4-foot putt or a 5-foot putt, you might feel some stress because you quote should make it. And so, what I told that pro golfer to do was every time you're putting and there's someone else that could see you putt on the practice green, I want you to move the hole in your mind to 6 inches past it and one side or the other. So I want you to burn the edge, and it looks like you missed a short putt. So practice some of those 3-footers and just burn the edge and let it stop 6 inches past it. And then she called me back a week or two later and said, I'm good now. And so then that got me thinking. And so now the alternate target and what we do in golf is anytime you're self-conscious. So in other words, concerned of looking foolish, or, what if I shank this or hit it out of bounds? That's a perfect time. That's when the ego's coming after you. And so then we pick a spot out of bounds. So say you're at first tee at your club, and there's members all watching you. Everyone stops what they're doing to look at you tee off, and then you're nervous about swinging and missing or hitting the ball into the woods or whatever. So that's a perfect time to do it on purpose. So you pick a spot way out of bounds, and then you can't tell anybody. So you're going to hit a big hook or a big fade, and just do it on purpose in front of everyone.
Wow. Like I said before, you haven't seen me play golf before, so I definitely could not do it on purpose because I can't keep it where I want to go. Reminds me of the former, I think, Minnesota Twin and then ultimately New York Yankees second baseman Chuck Knobloch near the end of his career. I know I shouldn't say this word in our field, but he got the yips where he was really struggling throwing a quote unquote, like you said before, a ground ball that he should be able to throw an easy play over to first base, but it really impacted his game. And I know that he was not able to adapt to that. Is there something in common or something that you often see or suggest that for those players that are able to make those adjustments to overcome those mental barriers, because they're not physical barriers, they're mental barriers, as opposed to those people that ultimately are not able to do it?
Yeah. So the thing with Chuck and Steve Sachs and those two second basemen is that they could do it in practice. It's just during the games, and that's because practice it didn't matter, and to them. And so your subconscious mind is only trying to protect you. Two major rules for the subconscious. Your life is being run by your heart, which is your spirit or your will, and your subconscious mind working together. And your subconscious mind has two main roles, and it's way more powerful than your conscious mind. And the two main jobs of your subconscious is to protect you and to line up your results and circumstances with your beliefs. And so, what happens to people like Chuck and Steve Sachs and guys like that is that they make a bad throw, or quote bad in their mind, and they feel embarrassed, or it's just a really negative feeling. If you can make 10 errors in a row, and if you have no reaction, no negative reaction to it, and it's not painful, then your subconscious doesn't care. You could make one bad throw, and if you're like, oh my gosh, if say some scout in the stands was watching, or someone important in your mind was watching, and you made a bad throw, that could become traumatic for you, and that could become a mental block. And so it just depends on how you process it. But the way that we deal with it, because this is not uncommon in baseball, especially pro baseball when they're playing 6 7 days a week, um, is we want to make sure that we're asking ourselves some key questions, like, am I willing to face my fears? Am I willing to fail? Am I willing to have any feeling? And am I willing to sit with this feeling even if it never leaves? So, what happens when you have a mental block, say in throwing, is that it's preceded by a feeling of fear. What if I throw this away? And so that's a good time to do the alternate target. The alternate target has two main purposes: one, to overcome your fear of failure, and two, to overcome the ego, self protection, the concern, what will people think of me. And so you're not going to have the mental block of throwing it to second if you're not afraid of making an error. It's when you have to do something and you don't have full control over it. How many people in Major League Baseball make errors? Every single one. And so you can't, even Gold Glovers make errors. And so since you know that you could make an error, you could throw it away, and even the very best do, then it becomes scary if you quote have to. And so that's why we need this freedom to face these feelings, because it's the feelings that are causing the problem. It's not the body.
I love that, and I appreciate you expanding on that. Follow up question I have for maybe a listener that might not be a professional or semi-professional athlete, but maybe a traditional job or sales job or something. Is there something that you often recommend that if somebody does fail or they don't make that sale, but they typically struggle with getting quote unquote back on the horse? Is there an exercise or something that you can maybe share with our listeners to encourage those people that maybe have fallen off or failed or lost something to be able to get back quicker than it usually takes them?
Well, this is kind of similar to what you're asking. Is that the number one thing that holds people back? Most people never reach their potential because they don't have the belief that they can be someone that they're not. And so you can start with that question: am I willing to become someone I've never been before? And I mean, that's the definition of growth: to be someone you've never been before. And so it's what holds most people back. They're not willing to become someone they've never been before. They're not willing to leave their past behind. Leaving your past behind is so scary, because who will I be if I don't have a past? Because most people, their identity comes from their past, and it comes from their achievements or lack of. If they feel like they haven't achieved much, then their identity goes to that. If they feel like they have achieved much, then their identity goes to that. Either way, it's stressful, because if your identity is based on what you achieved, then there's so much out of your control and achievements. And or if your identity is in your looks, there's it's all out of so much is out of your control. And so we want to develop the beliefs that you can be someone you've never been before. And beliefs are feelings. Not every feeling is a belief, but beliefs are comprised of feelings. They feel a certain way, and that's how phobias work. You get a feeling, a really strong negative feeling, in a split second, and that becomes a belief that people have the rest of their lives. They have it till they die, and that belief came on in one split second. They might have a snake crawl over their foot. They had maybe some sort of an aversion for snakes, didn't like them. Maybe they had a relative that thought they were terrible. And then all of a sudden one crawls over their foot. And now and in one split second, they've got a phobia of snakes for the rest of their life. But they should know that can easily be cured usually in someone that's better than me in one session. And so those are definitely curable. And understanding that beliefs is what's running your life, and beliefs are expandable. And that's what inner excellence is learning to expand what you believe is possible. And that's really being willing to face feelings you've never faced before.
As someone in your career and the mindset piece, for someone who's maybe listening and just beginning to explore mindset and beliefs and things, are there or do you have a suggestion, in addition to obviously reading your book, for someone that is looking to get into and understanding more of the mindset and to build and develop stronger beliefs?
Well, one book I've recommended for decades is John Kehoe's Mind Power to the 21st Century. It's a simple book, talks about the power of the subconscious mind. That's a great one. I also send usually send to my clients a book called Seven Steps to the Perfect Free Throw. It's about a 72-year-old retired podiatrist who took up shooting free throws as a hobby, and he made 2,700 in a row. Um, it's a world record, and he's 72. He's not an NBA player, and so I sent it to them to show my clients the importance of routines and the importance of visualization.
All right, I didn't know you were going to go there, but I love that. Visualization to me is something that I talk a lot to my clients. Got to ask you just to give your 2 cents on why and how important it is, because I think a lot of people gloss over the importance of visualization.
Visualization is the looking to the future and getting a feeling of doing things that you haven't done before, or doing things that you just anything that you want to do or become. So when I wrote Inner Excellence, I had a standard visualization that I would do before every time I wrote, and the reason was because I wanted to get into uh, uh, a zone of feeling connected to God, self, the environment, the universe, everything. I wanted to have this connection and this sense of anything's possible. I wanted to be creative and not be limited by my own thoughts and background. And so I came up with this visualization that I thought, what would give me the most confidence? And so the visualization was getting picked up in a limo, getting driven to an ivy covered building that looks like the Pentagon, and a fully uniformed Marine would greet me, and he would walk me to the office, and he would tell me this is the best 2 minutes of his day, because I would encourage him in our walk. And then we get to the office, and it's a beautiful office overlooking the ocean or some beautiful scenery, with big bay windows and a library. And then inside would be waiting 10 or 12 people like Nelson Mandela and Gandhi and Martin Luther King Jr. and coaches like John Wooden. So 10 or 12 of them. And they all had one question they got to ask me. And then there would be a facilitator who would hand me the one question from each person, and I'd go around and we would discuss it. At the end, they would line up single file and give me a big hug and walk out. And so that was the visualization I had to give me confidence for writing. So visualization is really just seeing yourself in the future, doing things that you've never done before. And there's many ways to do it, because everyone's different. Some people can't see themselves holding a trophy or winning an event, but can you see yourself in the clubhouse at the Masters, for example, just walking around? Can you see yourself walking around with people that are doing what you want to do? And you don't even have to talk to them. Just start somewhere where you can see yourself in the future moving towards that dream.
I like that you mentioned golf, and I'm gonna not quote it correctly, but I remember I get asked quite often about visualization and when did I really buy into it, and it was probably God maybe 10 or so years ago now when I first saw a quote by Jack Nicklaus when he talked about he's never made a putt in real life that he hasn't already made in his mind. And I just remember the concept of seeing it in the mind first and going ahead and then doing it. And I think Zig Ziglar has a lot of funny quotes, but famous quotes where people playing golf, and as soon as they hit the ball into the woods or into the water, before anybody says anything, they say, "Oh, I knew I was going to hit it in the water." And Zig would always say, "Well, if you knew you were going to hit it in the water, like why'd you do it, or why didn't you take a step back and rethink it?" And I think people don't take into consideration how important it is to really visualize those things. And as a writer yourself, you did your own routine, and it got you into a flow where you could be successful. And I've seen so many of my clients be able to do the same thing, but not everybody believes in the power of visualization. I think they often miss and think it's kind of foo-foo, I guess, as opposed to actual or real skill.
Well, essentially, everyone is visualizing anyway. Like Jack was every time someone lines up a putt, they're visualizing it anyway. It's just what are they visualizing? Is it where's it going? And so some people are better at visualization than others, but it's really just learning to use your imagination, dream great dreams.
I love that. Want to change lanes here for a second. Question we ask each guest, and I'm very intrigued to get your answer. I know you know the Jim Rohn quote, you are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. If you were able to have dinner tonight with any 5 people, dead or alive, that you could level up with, who would you pick for your 5?
Oh, that's the easy one. Yeah, I mean, I assume we would get rid of. Uh, sorry, that's the wrong phrasing. Wouldn't include Jesus because that's too easy. I would say King David and Moses and Solomon. Solomon the wisest, King David the great warrior, and Moses, parting the Red Sea. It's pretty hard to choose 3 people above that.
I love it. And you referenced a couple books before that you give to your clients. Wanted to ask if you've read anything recently, or if you're currently reading something that's newer that you might recommend to our listeners.
Well, one book that I carried around with me everywhere when I was younger was Jim Layer's Mental Toughness Training for Sports. So that was always really helpful. Inner Excellence has 9 disciplines, and one of those is to fuel your heart. That, in other words, you're filling your heart and mind with information every day anyway. It's just what are you fueling it with? And so Inner Excellence is about filling it with love, wisdom, and courage. One of those disciplines I was going to mention earlier is to speak the truth. You mentioned about what listeners can do, and one of the first things I do with clients is teach them this Inner Excellence discipline of speaking the truth about the past to create possibilities in the future. So most people, one of the reasons why they're unable to get, feel like they're spinning their wheels and unable to get anywhere or reach their potential is because they keep carrying their past with them, and they do it with their language. So they might they label themselves as something that's not empowering, or they might say, I'm struggling with this, or I'm struggling with that, or I'm not good at this, or I'm not good at that, and those are limiting beliefs that um, are really the thing that's holding them back. It's not the actual skill; it's their belief based on their language that they use. Like for example, Carol Dweck in her book Mindset talked about creativity and being an artist, and showed how um, people that were creative really it's just they said that they're creative, and people that were not creative said they weren't. And she showed this example of how someone who had no skills in art, and how they and then after taking an art class a week later they did a self-portrait and that looked 10 times better just with some training. I also think of the singer Ed Sheeran. um, he said before he goes in to perform or practice, he always tells himself this one thing: dare to suck. And it kind of goes along with that idea of, are you willing to fail? Are you willing to look bad and foolish and in front of everybody? Because if you are, then you've got freedom. If you're not, then you don't have freedom. And it takes freedom to be great.
Mm. That last question was that could have been an entire podcast episode itself. I appreciate you touch on that. I wanted to give you an opportunity for our listeners that maybe want to connect with you, find out more about you, or follow you. What's the best way for them to do so? And if you could please just reshare about your new book, I guess, that you said is being re-released. So definitely would suggest that they pick that up, as well as a copy of Inner Excellence.
Yeah, sure. So innerexcellence.com, my website. There you can sign up for the newsletter, the VIP newsletter. So that's where you'll hear about workshops and retreats. And I occasionally share, things like this podcast ideas that I work on with my clients. Social media, Inner Excellence Jim Murphy on Instagram, and we have a Facebook group as well that we're getting going.
I appreciate that. And the last question we have for you is the same question we ask everybody: is if you have any parting words you'd like to leave our listeners with today.
And then one more thing: The Best Possible Life. You can get that on Amazon. It will be out in bookstores in the fall. So, parting words. Yeah, I think it's so important for people to know that there's hope, because there's going to be some listeners that feel like there's no hope. And I think one of the problems that the first thing you need to do is shut off the news. And if you absolutely feel like you need to understand what's happening in the world, I get it. Then don't watch and listen to it. Just read it, because video news is negative. I mean, that's, if it bleeds, it leads. And so we really got to make sure that you're focused on the positive. And what the world needs is hope, and the world needs is you, your true self, and someone who's learning and growing and making a difference in the world. And so, for the listeners out there that are struggling, understand that everything you're going through right now is training for you. And not only is it possibly not the worst thing for you, it may be the best thing for you, what you're going through right now. Just put one foot in front of the other, and can you do one thing today? Understanding that everything is training for you, and that there's hope, and that you are what the world needs is something that everyone needs to hear.
I truly appreciate you taking the time to jump on here today. For our listeners, I definitely recommend you following Jim on social media, but grab a copy of his book, Inner Excellence, and then be on the lookout for his, I guess, updated new book in the fall. And just want to, again, thank you for taking the time to be here today. I really appreciate you. I love what you're doing, and I took probably 2.5 pages of notes on here as well. So I know that our listeners got a ton. I did as well. And again, just thank you for being on here today.
Thanks so much for having me, Christopher.
Thank you for listening to episode number 553. I'm truly grateful that Jim joined us. Not only did I really enjoy the conversation, but I walked away challenged and encouraged. There was one question Jim asked during the episode that really stuck with me. Are you willing to become someone you have never been before? It's a powerful question and one worth sitting with. In his closing message, Jim reminded us that there is hope, and I could not agree more. No matter where you are in your journey, it is important to always remember that there is hope. Thank you again for being a part of our No Quit tribe. And remember, believe, and live out our motto: we rise by lifting others up. And lastly, to our listeners, thank you. We truly appreciate your time, and we hope our episodes inspire you to keep on attacking life and never giving up. To quote Dr. Norman Vincent Peale, it's always too early to quit.